24 years, one defense lawyer, and one question Spain's Prime Minister still can't answer. On May 18th, the wife of Spain's Prime Minister filed her final defense. Her lawyer's argument? Absolute absence of evidence. The prosecution's demand? 24 years in prison. This is the story of how a university position became a corruption trial, and how one court case could break a government. 4 charges: embezzlement, influence peddling, business corruption, misappropriation of public funds. All of them center on Begoña Gómez, the wife of Pedro Sánchez, and all of them ask the same question: did she use her husband's position for private gain? The story begins at Madrid's Complutense University. In 2020, Begoña Gómez was named director of an extraordinary chair, a special academic position focused on what she called competitive social transformation. The position came with something unusual: corporate sponsorships. Companies like Barrabés, Google, and Telefónica provided funding, not through public bidding, not through university procurement, through direct deals. Private prosecutors now claim those deals bypass the law, that Gómez used her position as the Prime Minister's wife to secure sponsors without competition, that meetings were held in the Prime Minister's official residence, that public resources were used for private benefit. Gómez's defense says none of that happened. On May 18th, her lawyer Antonio Camacho filed a 23-page brief. Former Interior Minister, Socialist Party figure, now defending the Prime Minister's wife in what could be Spain's most politically explosive trial. His argument is direct: there is no crime here. Not embezzlement, not influence peddling, not corruption. The brief uses one phrase over and over: absolute absence of evidence. According to the defense, Begoña Gómez began working with the university in 2012, before Sánchez was Prime Minister, before he was even party leader. She co-directed master's programs, she taught courses, she built the position herself. The corporate sponsorships? Standard practice for extraordinary chairs. The meetings at the Prime Minister's residence? COVID restrictions. She worked from home like everyone else during the pandemic. The defense argues that if this case goes to a jury trial, the only possible outcome is acquittal, because the facts, they say, do not support the charges. But private prosecutors see it differently. The accusations are led by Acquittal, a conservative advocacy group using Spain's popular prosecution system. In Spain, private organizations can bring criminal charges if prosecutors decline to act. It is a distinctive feature of the Spanish legal system, and in this case, it has created a fight. The private prosecutors want 24 years in prison for Begoña Gómez. They want 22 years for Cristina Álvarez, Gómez's former assistant at the Prime Minister's office. They want 6 years for Juan Carlos Barrabés, the businessman whose company sponsored the university chair. Their argument? This was not standard academic practice. This was a network. Gómez held the position, Álvarez coordinated, Barrabés paid. And all of it, they claim, was designed to benefit the Prime Minister's wife, using public resources and private access. The private prosecutors point to meetings, emails, and contracts. They argue the sponsorships were arranged through personal connections, not merit. They claim the university chair gave Gómez a platform she never would have received without her husband's role, and they want the court to treat it as corruption. This is not just about one case. It is about Pedro Sánchez. It is about PSOE. It is about whether Spain's ruling party can survive another file opening inside its own political orbit. Because Begoña Gómez is not the only one under pressure. Sánchez's brother, David, is facing trial for influence peddling. Investigators claim he used his family connection to secure a government job in Badajoz. He denies wrongdoing. The trial is expected later this year. José Luis Ábalos, Sánchez's former transport minister and right-hand man, is in prison awaiting trial. The Coldo case, COVID mask contracts. Prosecutors are seeking 24 years. Ábalos was the architect of Sánchez's rise to power. Now he is behind bars. Santos Cerdán, Sánchez's former PSOE organization secretary, was arrested in June 2025. Prosecutors claim he led a corruption network involving public works contracts. He was released on bail in November, but the investigation continues. And then there is José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, Spain's former prime minister from 2004 to 2011, a PSOE elder statesman. His offices were raided in May 2026. He's being investigated for his role in a €53 million state bailout to Plus Ultra Airlines during the pandemic. Zapatero was a consultant to the airline at the time. It is the first time in Spain's democratic history that a former prime minister has faced such serious accusations. One wife, one brother, one former transport minister, one former organization secretary, one former prime minister, all facing judicial pressure, all connected to Pedro Sánchez, all connected to PSOE. This is not a coincidence, this is a pattern. But here is what makes this story matter beyond Spain. Spain is not a small regional actor. It is a NATO member. It is the Eurozone's fourth largest economy. It is a Mediterranean power. It is a Western democracy whose internal stability affects Washington, Brussels, and the Atlantic Alliance. And right now, Spain's prime minister is governing under a cloud. His wife is facing 24 years in prison. His inner circle is collapsing. His party's anti-corruption credibility is gone, and his political opponents are calling for his resignation. In March 2026, President Trump threatened Spain with a full trade embargo. The issue? Spain refused to let US military bases be used for missions linked to strikes on Iran. Trump called Spain terrible and said they wanted a free ride. In June 2025, Spain became NATO's only member to reject the alliance's 5% defense spending target. Sánchez said 2.1% was enough. Trump and European allies pushed back. Sánchez eventually agreed to raise it to 2% by the end of 2026. But the damage was done. Spain is isolated within NATO. Spain is under economic pressure from Washington, and Spain's government is under judicial pressure at home. Domestic scandals limit foreign policy credibility. When a NATO ally's prime minister is defending his wife in court, it weakens the perception of stability. It raises questions about governance. It creates doubt. That is why this story matters to an American viewer, because Spain's instability is not just Spain's problem. It is a problem for the Western Alliance. It is a problem for NATO cohesion. It is a problem for the credibility of democratic institutions. If you're finding this useful, subscribe to the Madrid Files. The court will decide by June 2026 whether Begoña Gómez's case goes to trial. If it does, the trial will be held before a jury. The defense is confident. They believe a jury will see what they see: no evidence, no crime, no case. But the private prosecutors are equally confident. They believe the evidence shows a network, influence, corruption, and they want 24 years. One of these arguments will prevail, and when it does, Spain's political future will shift. If Begoña Gómez is acquitted, Sánchez will claim vindication. He will say the accusations were political. He will say the opposition used the courts to attack him. He will try to rebuild. But if she goes to trial, or if she is convicted, Sánchez's position becomes untenable. The opposition will demand his resignation. PSOE will face pressure to replace him, and Spain will head into 2027 elections under the worst possible conditions for the ruling party. The question is not just whether Begoña Gómez committed a crime. The question is whether Spain's ruling party can survive the perception that it did. Because in politics, perception is often more powerful than proof. 24 years demanded, full acquittal requested, and one prime minister caught in between. The court will decide soon, and when it does, the file will either close or explode. Subscribe to the Madrid Files, because the next file is already open.